Hello everyone from the SOTAR Secret Society Facebook group and everyone that will be watching this video afterwards on YouTube and other sources. It's another weekly video. We're going to SOTAR live chat number 2. Still have some topics from our previous list of recommendations for the video. I'm going to try to cover some of those, and I'll also keep a rolling list of other recommendations for videos. So, hope everyone's week's been well. One of our close friends, if you've seen the other video, Saul from Rooftop Defense, and his family, Abby, their baby, and their dog, suffered a pretty big loss. They had a fire, or they lost pretty much everything. A GoFundMe was created, and up to, I believe, last night, they had raised $80,000+ from just the GoFundMe. It's not counting people donating directly to their PayPal account. But start off week pretty bad, and I'm hoping that the money that was raised is able to get them back up on their feet, maybe make them better off than they were before. So we're going to keep praying for their family, and hope they get their business off the ground again. Good people. We love them. I wanted to thank everyone in the group and other places that's associated with School of the American Rifle that donated. I really appreciate it. Going to be doing the raffle. We have several things we're going to give away to people who donated and posted that they donated in the Facebook group. We have a Law Tactical folder that Law Tactical has donated. We have some tools from Mark Brown Custom that Mark Brown has donated, a gas tube wrench and a gas tube gauge. We have a taco wrench from one of my friends, Alan Cooper, which is not made anymore. Sometimes those things go for pretty big bidding wars on Gunbroker and such. Also have a reliability package that I'm giving away for someone's rifle, so the winner will send me their entire rifle. I'll do a full tear down, blueprinting, rebuild, reliability package to it, gauging, all that kind of stuff. We also have having a Space Cadet moment. We have a giveaway for other items too. I'm just not thinking about them clearly right now. It'll come to me in a little bit. So, topics for today's video. Wanted to make sure we thanked everyone about the donation for Saul and Abby. One of the good points of discussion that we could cover today would be steel-cased ammo in your AR. And I think that that's going to be a rather short subject, so we may be able to cover other things. Steel-cased ammo, somewhat controversial. When it comes to how I teach this in my classes, I refer to the use of steel-cased ammo in ARs under the same rule that I apply it to com-block guns. I use the AK or SKS rule. That's what I refer to it as. A lot of people tilt their head. They don't quite understand that. Makes sense. But if anybody watching is an AK or an SKS fan, and you're really into them, you may know the answer to this question. And the first person to answer this in the live chat, I'll send them a patch. So, can anyone in the live chat tell me the one country who produced an AK and an SKS that did not have a chrome line, chamber, and bore? One country. We're not going to count the United States, because they don't count when it comes to that. The one country, first person who answers it, and I'll go back after the video and look and see who's the first one to answer. But the one country who made an AK and an SKS without a chrome line, bore, and chamber. There we go. My wife's helping me out. Josh Money donated 2 vice locks, an AR-10 version and an AR-15 version. She's helping me out behind the scenes, as always. Richard White He nailed it. The Yugos. Yugoslavian AKs and SKSs are not chrome lined in the bore and chamber. So some people debate this. They'll say that the reason that Yugoslavian guns aren't chrome lined is because of access to chromium deposits in their country. There's all kinds of reasons that are given. Regardless of why they're not chrome lined, because of natural resources, what it comes down to is proper function for the ammunition that is used in that particular gun. So every country who produced an AK and an SKS besides Yugoslavia used steel-cased ammo, and their bores and chambers were chrome lined. Specifically the chambers. This is what I'm going to address. So the chambers were chrome lined. Chrome lining in the chamber is a more lubricious surface. It doesn't allow things to stick to it. It also doesn't allow corrosion to set in as fast as an unlined chamber would. What this means is when you're shooting steel case ammo, regardless of the operating system, and gas piston guns tend to unlock and operate quicker than a DIAR. But all things being equal, when you have a chrome lined chamber and you're using steel case ammo doesn't expand as efficiently as brass case ammo does. So what happens is you get some blow by in the chamber area that can eventually cause the ammunition to stick, either not chamber properly or not extract properly. So when you have chrome lining in a gun that is shooting steel case ammo, generally it's more reliable because of that lubricious nature of the chrome lining in the chamber. Really doesn't have much to do with the chrome lining in the bore itself, just the chamber. So I refer to that as my AK and SKS rule. A gun that is intended to be shot heavily with steel case ammo should have a chrome lined chamber for peak operation. So when people say, I'd like to shoot steel case ammo in my AR, what would you recommend for a barrel? My recommendation is chrome lined barrel. Now the problem with this recommendation nowadays is that there's not many companies who make chrome lined barrels anymore. A lot of companies have moved over to nitride, so you'll normally see either just a stainless barrel, a nitrided stainless barrel, or a nitrided 4140, 4150 barrel of some nature. There's different names to it instead of just nitride. Sometimes they have a PQP. There's various names that it's called. But a chrome lined barrel generally does operate more reliably with steel case ammo. So if you have a nitrided or PQP barrel, does that mean you can't shoot steel case ammo or it's going to be dangerous? Absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying. So don't take this the wrong way or try to twist it around and say, Chad's wrong because I have a gun that's nitrided and it shoots steel case ammunition perfectly. That may be the case for you, and I'm honestly happy that your gun works reliably with the nitrided barrel and steel case ammo. But generally speaking, an AR and any gun runs more reliably when you're shooting steel case ammo with a chrome lined chamber. So there are other factors with steel case ammo that people obsess over. They worry about extractor wear. They worry about barrel wear. Does steel case ammunition wear things out in the barrel a little faster? It does. It'll wear the rifling a little faster. It'll wear the throat a little faster. And it'll wear the muzzle a little faster depending on muzzle configuration, such as suppressors, things like that. Most steel case ammo is bimetal in nature, which means that the projectile isn't a copper jacketed projectile. It actually has steel in the jacket material, so it's a little harder. So there are some positives to shooting bimetal projectiles on a new barrel. It breaks the barrel in a little faster because the projectiles are harder. Lucky Gunner, an ammunition retailer, did a test probably about 10 years ago now, where they found that steel case ammo does wear the barrel faster, and I can't disagree with any of the findings in that video. What they did also find in that video is that steel case ammunition is less reliable. They had more malfunctions with steel case ammo than the brass case ammo. There was no malfunctions with I believe it was federal ammunition with 10,000 rounds, where the various other imported steel cased ammo had a handful of reliability issues. Failure to feed, failure to extract. Does that mean that you can't use it for any serious purpose? No, it just means that you're more likely to experience a reliability issue with steel case ammo. And the guns in the test were chrome lined. They were Bushmaster rifles, which aren't always known for their perfect assembly and gauge dimensions when it comes to inspecting them. But there were more malfunctions. But you can wear your barrel a little faster with steel case ammo. That being said, everything averages out. So if you intend on shooting steel case ammo, which is cheaper than brass case ammo generally, you will save money on the ammunition, which means that you will wear your barrel a little faster, which means that you'll have to replace your barrel sooner. A lot of people obsess way too much about that because most people are not going to shoot their barrels out regardless if they're shooting brass case ammo with full metal jacket or they're shooting steel case ammo. So don't worry about it. What I recommend is just make sure you have a good extractor spring in your bolt. Spring is my recommendation. And use a chrome line barrel if you have access to it. Now I'm pulling up the Chick-fil-A for my morning snack. So we'll have to deviate from our conversation for a moment.
Good morning. What can I get you?
Good morning. Can I get a chicken burrito?
Yep. Did you want just a burrito or the meal?
Just a burrito.
Okay.
I'd like to get a large Coke.
All right.
And an orange juice.
Alrighty. Was that it for you?
That'll be it.
May I have a name for the order?
Chad.
Right. Any sauce or anything?
No, thank you.
And cash or card? $9.20.
Card.
Right, I can have you go ahead and swipe for me.
Get it on there.
Right. There you go. You are all set. Have a good one.
Thank you. You too. All right, we're back, everyone. So where was I? We were talking about steel case ammo. I think I covered most of the points of discussion on that I generally talk about in classes. I don't have my PowerPoint to make sure I didn't miss everything, but that's the general consensus from my perspective about steel case ammunition. Do I shoot steel case ammunition in my ARs? Yes, I do. I reserve it for the guns that are chrome lined. There are other guns that I have that will shoot it, but I tend to keep that diet of ammunition out of them. So if you want to shoot steel case ammo, rock it. If you have a nitride barrel, there's nothing dangerous about it, but you may see more occasional extraction or chambering issues with it. May, not will. So I'm in the drive-thru. I can check out some of the chat now. I can only see a couple of them. Daniel Wilson says he always gets extra cheese. Didn't think about that. Scott wants Chick-fil-A. Well, it's early, so everybody has the chance to do it, except for you guys in California. It's, what, 5:40 in the morning? They're not even open yet, I don't think. Alright, so steel case ammo, we discussed the fundraiser for rooftop defense. QC issues in the market right now. I think we should discuss that. I've discussed it often in the Facebook group. I tend not to discuss it outside of the Facebook group and the private discussions that I have with people and in classes. Those are the three places that I tend to reserve this for. I did make posts on the business page, the Facebook business page, and I think I've even done it on Instagram here and there. But the quality control issues that we've seen since the election, and even before that when COVID broke out, has been extremely high. I'd probably say that since I've been working on guns, ARs specifically, I've seen more quality control issues in the past year than I have all years combined, with exception to the end of 2012, beginning of 2013. Right around the time Sandy Hook happened, I saw a pretty huge rise in quality control issues in the AR market, but that tend to tapered off pretty fast with COVID and the election and people trying to buy firearms for various reasons. The quality control for the AR market has dropped tremendously, and that's across the board. A lot of people say, well, of course, quality control for more budget price manufacturers is going to be poor and get more poor as demand rises, but it's across the board. Even companies that a lot of people revere heavily have had, well, I have seen issues from them, and it's not always an issue with a manufacturer in itself when you're using their components together. It's a compatibility issue with other manufacturers. So it comes down to tolerances. So let's say, for instance, I have a bolt from company A and a barrel from company B. And I check those components with Headspace Gauge. What I'm looking for is how the parts or the ingredients in the recipe mesh. Not necessarily what are the individual dimensions on the bolt and what are the individual dimensions on the barrel. I'm looking for how those parts communicate to one another. So when I check Headspace and it fails Headspace with those two components from different manufacturers, it doesn't necessarily mean that each manufacturer made a pile of junk. It just means that the tolerances can be an extreme on either end, or sometimes outside of the acceptable tolerance range. And when those two parts marry, they don't play well together. So don't always blame an issue with gauging on a particular company. We had a question in the Facebook group, I believe it was yesterday, about that. Or outside of the group, it may have been another Facebook group that was gun related. It may have been forward controls designs, but a gentleman was asking about Headspace gauges, and he made the suggestion. Someone made the suggestion to buy the barrel extension Headspace gauges that I use. That you use solely just in the barrel. And the original person who asked the question was like, "Well, that'll work fine because you're not going to see issues with head spacing on a bolt." And in my experience, that's not accurate. You will see issues with AR bolts, and it can be either the bolt or the barrel. The Headspace gauge that is made specifically for a barrel minus a bolt tells you that the barrel itself is within a certain tolerance range. It doesn't always isolate the bolt as being a problem, but what it does is it helps me troubleshoot or determine with more precision of what is at fault if something doesn't pass a traditional Headspace gauge. So if I put a go gauge in the barrel and then I try to manipulate the bolt and get it close, and it doesn't close, it could be the bolt, it could be the barrel. And this person who was asking about gauges assumed that bolts were always in spec, and it was always the barrel that was the problem, and that's not the case. So don't get too wrapped up in who makes your stuff. Does that mean don't buy stuff from well-regarded companies? No, that's not what I'm saying. You generally have less problems with companies that have a good reputation. But that doesn't mean that if you buy budget stuff, you're guaranteed to have a failure or a problem. You just tend to have more issues, more problems. But those things can normally be worked out. Believe it or not, up until COVID hit, it was quite common for my 2-day classes for students to bring an extremely cheap parts kit. So people, again, get very tribal about quality, who makes stuff, brands, things like that. But people would bring pretty much what I call wish.com parts kits to my classes, and they would ask, well, what can I do to make this run reliably? And some people on the more tribal side of our industry or culture will say you can't build a reliable gun out of a $300+ parts kit. Now, those parts kits don't really exist anymore because of the supply and demand issues. But up before COVID, they did exist, and it was possible, and it consistently happened, where I can teach how to take a budget grade kit, and assuming that certain important parts pass inspection checks, you can have an extremely reliable AR as long as things are done right. And what I mean by that is certain things pass certain gauge dimensions, and you assemble it properly. So certain things have to be put together right, and then they have to pass certain tests or inspections. One of the biggest issues tends to be feed ramps not playing well together. So can you build an AR out of very cheap components? Yes, but you need to know what to look for. So that doesn't mean that if you have no understanding of what to look for, you can take a $300 parts kit, slap it together, and just send it. You might have luck, you might not. But you can, with the right amount of knowledge, with a moderate amount of tools and gauges, assemble a very, very cheap parts kit if you know what you're doing. Generally speaking, if someone buys an extremely budget-minded parts kit or components to build up a gun, I always tell them to replace all of the important springs with good springs, which we discussed in a previous video. Always treat them suspect. Put a good buffer in it. The cheaper parts kits normally come with what I refer to as a Chinesian buffer or a cheap buffer. Put a good buffer in the gun, and it wouldn't hurt if you could purchase a new carrier or gas key and new screws for that, and have it installed properly by a person who understands how to do that right, using the right staking tools, methods, things like that. But a good gas key and gas key screws installed with the proper torque value, good springs, and a good buffer, you will generally have good success if everything passes out on the gauging side. Now, that doesn't mean that the bolt that you use in the cheap parts kit will last forever, so if you want some added insurance, buy a bolt from a reputed manufacturer and replace the one that's in the parts kit, the budget parts kit, that is. So we're still in the drive-through. Let's see if I can watch some of the screen. Nate says random AVE. That I don't know. Is that a gaming reference? I guess you could call me a boomer because I don't get some of this stuff. AVE. Oh, Jack's watching. Hello, Jack. How many people do we have watching here? 33. Not bad. Not bad. We're in the Chick-fil-A drive-thru right now. I know it has a lot to do with ARs, but it gives me a moment to look at the screen. My drive to work today might be long, so the video might be a little longer. So we discussed QC issues. One of the things that people get bent out of shape about what I teach, specifically in classes, is deviating outside of the armorer method. So most armorers are trained to look for something in particular, whether it be with a gauge or it be with an inspection process or a certain amount of time or a round count, and they replace a part based on something they're looking for. I teach people, because I come from a different lineage, I come from a gunsmithing background, to fix things if possible, but not bubble them. So what I mean by that is, if you have a component that doesn't play well, you can sometimes fix it if you follow a certain method, and it's completely safe and reliable. So people get bent out of shape about that. I'm going to come back to that because I'm at the drive-thru window. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. You too. Oh, could you give me a receipt? No, it's not in here. Oh, there it is. You got me. Thank you. I was lying to the Chick-fil-A ladies. Sorry, ladies. Alright, but when it comes down to replacing parts, armor versus gunsmith, what I try to teach students in classes is not everything requires a call or an email to the manufacturer. Sometimes, if you have enough skill, you can make a part work. And this is where I try to teach people their limits. So, I teach methods, and then I let students decide whether or not they feel that they have the skills to perform the task at hand, or if they use that knowledge that I tried to impart on them to make the decision to pay someone to do that work. It goes outside of their area of expertise or their capabilities. So a lot of people get bent out of shape about that. It mainly gets into feed ramps. One of the funny stories about feed ramps is there was a Facebook group, actually there was two of them simultaneously, that were really coming down hard on me about pictures that circulate of my feed ramp work that I do. So my feed ramp work, when it's done, they look like mirrors. So some people will try to replicate that. I don't have a video showing how feed ramp work is done because that's something that I reserve for classes. I feel that if I make a video on that and I don't have a one-on-one interaction with a student, it's easy for me to make a video that could mislead someone or give them false confidence in doing something, and it's really easy to mess up the barrel extension feed ramps on an AR if you don't know what you're doing. You're dealing with a rotary tool, a Dremel, and if you don't do it the right way, things can get away from you and you can ruin a barrel. If you're trying to practice on some junk barrel that you have in a pile, that's one thing, but if it's a good barrel, it's a usable, a serviceable, can't talk today, a serviceable barrel, I don't want to be part of teaching someone something that could lead to them damaging something. So I don't have a video on feed ramp modifications for that reason. It doesn't mean that I'm trying to be stingy with it. I just try to reserve certain things like feed ramp work for a classroom setting because I feel it requires a one-on-one interaction. There are things that I can put on video that convey very clearly, but there are certain things that I feel requires a one-on-one interaction. I would say it's probably very similar to what most tactics instructors will try to relate when it comes to teaching students. There are some things that you could put on a video and share with people, and it could help them up to a certain point, but that never replaces that one-on-one interaction when it comes to teaching someone. And everybody has a different method of doing things, so this is where the one-on-one really helps me make the student comfortable with their capabilities once they're in the class working or something like that. So feed ramps was an issue that some AR groups were trying to roast me over. And what was funny is as they're roasting me about feed ramps, and the argument is that if you have issues with feed ramps, and what I refer to as issues means the barrel extension feed ramps and the upper receiver feed ramps, known as M4 feed ramps. Not all ARs have M4 feed ramps, but ones that are equipped with M4 feed ramps have cuts, 2 little scallops in the upper receiver. And those have to mate properly with the barrel extension feed ramps. And if you have any overhang, so if this is the barrel extension feed ramps and this is the upper receiver, if the barrel extension ramps overhang the M4 ramps in the upper receiver, what happens is the round tries to come up, it basically hits a wall. It can take material off of the projectile, it can set the projectile back, it can cause the projectile to yaw or kick off to one side. It can cause all kinds of weird issues, not just reliability, but accuracy issues too. So the argument is that if you have that geometry issue, then you should just take the barrel off of the upper and send it back to the manufacturer. The problem is that the manufacturer may send you back another barrel that has the same exact problem. So what do? Do you keep on playing musical chairs with the manufacturer and just keep on sending stuff back and forth? It's the recipe again. It comes down to the company who made the upper receiver may have a different tolerance or location for the M4 ramps compared to the company who made the barrel or barrel extension, and they don't always play well together. So what do? As a gunsmith, I say make it work. And most AR manufacturers aren't going to take a barrel and chuck it into the trash. They're going to do something to the barrel extension to make it work too. So the mindset is it's either good or it's complete bad. I don't adopt. Now, if you've been trained that way and you've been to armorers classes that teach you have to replace things, and maybe you're with a police department or an agency that requires that protocol, then you have to adhere to that. If your policies with your department or your agency says that you can't modify things, then you have to follow those guidelines. But on the civilian side, you're not restricted by any of that. You can make it work, assuming you do it right. But what the funny part of the conversation was the people that are in that armor only category. If the feed ramps aren't right, you have to replace the barrel or the upper receiver. They were saying that I was doing the AR community a disservice by teaching people how to do feed ramp modifications, because that should be something that only a manufacturer has the understanding and expertise to fix. And then a couple of people brought up the fact that Monty from Centurion Arms does pretty extensive feed ramp polishing on some of their barrels. And the argument from the same people that were criticizing me about teaching people how to modify feed ramps was, well, Monty is different. Monty is a manufacturer. He is a respected industry person. And he knows how to make sure that ramp work is done properly. As this discussion is taking place, and what's funny about it is I don't disagree. Monty does know his stuff. But as this discussion in various AR groups is taking place, Monty is sitting in my class. And the reason that Monty initially was interested in my class is because pictures that he saw circulating of my feed ramp work. So Monty wanted to come to see if there was a way that he can enhance his feed ramp procedures into his production. Did I teach Monty something new? I couldn't say. You could ask Monty. But Monty came to my class to try to seek out more information, which is something that was extremely humbling for me, because I respect Monty more than I can put into words when it comes to what he does. So was I confident that I could teach him something? No. I just teach what I teach. And hopefully Monty came away with useful information. He did say nice things to me privately, but I'm not going to speak for him, because that's not what I do. But Monty came to my class, people were criticizing me, and as they're criticizing me for teaching certain methods, one of the most respected guys in the industry is in my class trying to extract information from me to make his feed ramp work better, if it's even possible. But he was still trying to improve, and this is one of the things that is interesting about a lot of people in the AR industry. The guys over at Knight's Armament are another unique breed and bunch of guys. Jack Luba and Ash Hess, specifically. People will go out of their way to try to attack some of my gauging methods, some of the stuff that I do in my physical and autopsy videos. And some people who watch my videos get the impression that I'm out to attack Knight's Armament for all of the autopsy videos that I do, where I catch minor issues with some of their stuff. They think that I'm out to get Knights, and I'm not. It just so happens that people that tend to invest a lot of money in their guns seek me out to have stuff checked out. So just because I'm working on a bunch of Knight stuff doesn't mean that Knights has more problems. It means that the people who own these more expensive products trust me more than their local shop, and they send the stuff to me. But what's interesting about people like Ash Hess and Jack Luba with Knights is that they're not the people in the industry, like others, who immediately go on the defense when someone like me finds a possible issue. They will immediately admit to it and say, you know what, we had an issue with this for this period of time, or with this particular product, maybe this particular fastener or screw, whatever it may be. And they'll own it and say, you know what, we had this problem, and they tell people we're willing to take care of it, where other companies aren't that way. They will immediately go on the defense. They will attack people. They'll go completely Armageddon. And there are some companies that if you mention my name when you call about quality control issues, they will cease communication with you, is the best way I can put it. They despise what I do. They think that I'm out to attack their company, and that's not the case. I'm not out to get anyone. I simply want to look at an individual component or a recipe of a particular sub-assembly, an upper receiver, lower receiver, and make sure that it does what it's supposed to do. And if it falls outside of those proper functions, then I call it out regardless of who makes it. So I'm not out to hurt anyone when I make any kind of content online, whether it's pictures, videos, whatever. But I'm humbled to know people like Jack Hess, Ash Luba, Monty, and I'm not intentionally leaving anybody out, but those are the three that have to do with this sort of subject: is online critique, people that want to attack what I do without actually understanding what I teach. Sometimes it can be a little bit, it can take the wind out of my sails a little bit. It doesn't make me want to quit, but it can definitely cause you to rethink your approach when people are constantly blasting you for the work that you do online, and I get it a good bit. But I think that's an important part to bring up, is quality control is important with the AR companies that tend to charge more for stuff, tend to put more effort into their quality control, and they will also stand behind their product when you do detect a problem with it. So it doesn't mean that you should run out and buy cheap stuff and expect success or problem-free issues, because Chad said that people build guns in his classes with a $300 parts kit. Those people are paying a lot more for the class than they did for the parts kit. My classes aren't cheap, but they leave the class with a reliable gun, and that blows people's minds. They're like, there's no way you can have a $300 parts kit be something reliable, and you can, but it takes a good bit of knowledge and skill. And that's what I try to teach in my classes. Learn the stuff so you don't need me. So I'm going to take a couple bites of my burrito, look at the screen. You said Chad who, click, call ended. That's pretty much how it goes with some companies. So I have a chicken burrito. I figured we'd add a little bit of humor to these morning videos. We're going to check Chick-fil-A's quality control. We have a chicken burrito here. We have a Mayu Toyo. Let's check the dimensions on this. All right, we got 6.41 for length, and we got 2.71 in diameter. Now, let's check balance. I can't tell you how often when I get a burrito, whether it be Chick-fil-A or Taco Bell, if I'm eating Taco Bell, that they put all the sour cream on one side, or maybe here all the chicken on one side, then you got all the egg on the other side. You got a misbalanced burrito. This is ridiculous. I don't like taking a big old bite of just chicken when I want to have a burrito. Look, this is not a well-balanced burrito. Chick-fil-A, shame on you. We'll find out when I eat it. I have a scale too. So let's see what we get for consistency. We're going to keep doing this in the videos. We're not just gauging ARs, we're gauging burritos. Alright, let's zero at the scale. Let's see what this burrito weighs. Just to show you, no camera tricks. There's our scale. What's our burrito weigh? TDP. Our burrito is 9.5 ounces. Alright, so we got 9.5 ounces. Maybe if I do more giveaways, it'll be what the previous burrito specs were for the giveaway. Gauge Boy's lost his mind. He's gauging out burritos. Yes. Yes, I have. Now you could use some Harbor Freight calipers there if you had to. And last time I forgot my important sauce, so a little bit of sriracha on my burrito. I don't like the sauce that comes with the Chick-fil-A burritos. I'm not saying it's bad, it's just not my thing. Alright. So, talked about some critique. And this is one thing that I try to keep in perspective for myself is I'm a constant student. I'm always trying to learn new things. I'm always trying to improve my methods. So the classes that I teach today will be different from the classes I teach next year. People that have been to classes through various stages of my business could tell you the same thing. My classes have radically changed from the very early days. Now, does that mean that I was teaching bad information at the beginning? No. It just means that I continuously try to hone my skills in the information that I pass on to people. So I'll get more equipment, I'll get more gauges. The importance of gauges comes down to is I'm trying to measure things in a way that a human can't discern with the naked eye or with feel. That's all I'm trying to do. You can't just throw together an AR and without using some basic gauges say with absolute certainty that everything is perfect every single time. There's always a little bit of gamble there if you're not going to gauge and inspect things. It doesn't mean that you have a ticking time bomb, but that's why I gauge. It removes some of the human element. Same reason that I use a torque wrench for various things. Does that mean that you have to use a torque wrench to put together an AR? No. It just creates more consistency. There are people that have a finely calibrated hand and elbow that can put together things very consistently. But they do that in a production environment day in and day out. But that being said, that has to do with some online critique. I will take critique from people. I try to learn from people, even if people come at me that aren't even in the AR industry. Sometimes you can learn things from people in different trades. You can learn things from people that work on aircraft. You can learn from people that work on vehicles, motorcycles. You can learn things from plumbers, electricians. Everybody has their little nuanced ways that they do things day to day, and you can always learn something from somebody. One of the big disappointments from my trip out to Utah for the primary and secondary event was that Jim Fuller was initially slated to be one of the technical instructors for the first primary and secondary conference, and Jim backed out because there wasn't enough people coming to that particular event that were interested in hearing an AK expert talk about his craft. I was really excited to sit in and listen to Jim. Not because I plan on working on AKs, it's just because I know that someone like Jim Fuller has information that can teach me how to be a better technical instructor, gunsmith, and armor. So I'm always on the lookout to improve myself, and I try to convey that to students. I tell students who come to my classes, continue on with your journey for knowledge about the AR and other weapons. Take other classes. Just because you've taken a School of the American Rifle class does not mean that your knowledge journey ends. Take classes from Sons of Liberty. Take classes from other sources. Go to manufacturer classes if you can get in. Some are very difficult to get into. Some are sort of an open book and they'll accept anybody, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But some you have to be within a certain agency of the government to get into classes. But continue your education if you're interested in doing this as a very dedicated hobby, or if you do it as a profession. Continue your education with classes. So that being said, if you have a critique about things that I teach, it doesn't mean that I'm going to get mad at you if you critique it. If you have something to say, just say, hey, do you ever think about this? Some people come at it the wrong way, and that's where people can get on the defensive. I'm guilty of that myself too. Some people are just really rude about everything they do. And again, I can be guilty about that at times too. I get bent out of shape because I tend to have to deal with a lot of problems on the internet when it comes to my work and how people perceive me. So I can get a little grouchy at times. It's not because I'm looking to be a jerk. It's just I get fed up sometimes. And it's time for me to log off the internet when that happens. So next thing, what would be... talked about QC issues, talked about steel cased ammo. We still got a good way for me to get to one of my main jobs, so we can talk about... Some people wanted me to talk about history. History is one thing that I don't get into with AR classes. Occasionally, students will come to me after the class or in an email communication or a phone call, and they'll say, how come you don't really address any history in the class? And there are instructors in the past who would spend a good amount of time talking about history of the AR weapon system. I tend not to do that because I feel personally, for the way that I teach classes, is that it's a waste of time. It's not a waste of time to understand history of the AR. What I mean is a waste of time, from my perspective, to try to repeat stuff that's easily sourced online without using classroom time. So, can I talk about historical aspects of the AR? Absolutely. I have what I would say is a moderate amount of knowledge there. I tend to not be as much of an expert on the history of the AR as other people in the industry. So I try to stay in my lane. And talking about lanes, people aren't letting me over so I can get into the lane that I need to be. Must be AK, guys. Thank you. You guys are going to see some road rage? Kidding. I don't do that. What was I talking about? Oh, history. I don't talk about history because there are lots of places you can get history. You can buy things like books like The Black Rifle. You can buy the AR-15 book that Larry Vickers makes. You can buy information from books from Chris Bartucci. He has all kinds of online content of his YouTube videos where he talks about different historical things when it comes to the AR. But I believe not that history is a waste of time, but it's just a waste of time for the amount of time that we have in classes to address historical stuff. I think that trying to learn about technical things is more important for our time that we have allocated. And the classes are long. My 2-day classes are generally between 20 and 24 hours long. So it's between a 12-hour day on the first day always, and an 8 to 12-hour day on the second day. So my classes are jam-packed full of as much information that I can feed students, and I try not to deviate outside of technical stuff. I want to make sure that everything is crammed into their noggin that can be crammed. And if I spend several hours talking about history, we lose important technical time, if that makes sense. So I don't talk about history. I don't get into it much in the Facebook groups either because, like I said, I don't believe that's my strong point. I know enough about historical stuff to understand why certain changes were made, but history is not what I do when it comes to the AR. Technical stuff is what I do. The same reason that I don't teach students anything with tactics. I don't steer outside my lane. I'm not a tactics instructor, so I'm not going to teach you in a classroom how to run your AR. I'm not going to teach you how to clear malfunctions. What I'm going to do is teach you how to inspect, troubleshoot, possibly build that gun to reduce the likelihood of having a malfunction. Does that mean that you should not get training on how to use that gun or clear that malfunction? That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that my class is tailored to that particular area of technical information. How to build it, how to maintain it, how to inspect it. Not how to run it, not how to understand the history of it. Those are areas where you can get other people that are experts in those fields to help you along if you need assistance in those areas. So, what's Jay saying? Especially in this class, which is data heavy, the history side is fun, but it's extracurricular necessity. Yep, and I agree, Jay. I don't think it's pointless. I believe that the time's better spent on technical stuff when it comes to classes. So, what next? Maybe I'll take a suggestion off, because I have some more here on my notepad, but maybe I'll see if we can talk about something that somebody brings up in the chat while I'm stopped at a stoplight. Let's see if somebody throws up something real quick. Who's quick on the keyboard? Nope, nobody caught something. Let's go back to the list. Oh, wait a minute. Harry Potter. I don't know about Harry Potter. My wife does Harry Potter with the kids. Gas system links. Alright, that's a good one. Gas system links, generally speaking, my voice is cracking. The longer the gas system, the softer the recoil impulse is. That's all things being equal. You can have two guns, one with a carbine link gas system, one with a mid-link gas system, and the mid-link can recoil harder because the ammunition you're shooting in the mid-link may be hotter. Maybe the gas port in the mid-link barrel is much larger than the one in the carbine. But when you're comparing apples to apples, generally speaking, the longer the gas system, the lighter the recoil impulse will be. And it's not going to be significant. It's minor. One of the things that you get most out of a longer gas system, though, assuming you have enough dwell time, and that's the distance from the gas port to the muzzle. Assuming you have enough dwell time, what you get out of a longer gas system is increased parts service life. So NAVSEA did a test a couple years ago where they compared the carbine length gas system to the mid-length gas system. I don't have the data in front of me, but generally speaking, if I'm remembering the information correctly, is the mid-length gas system made the bolt last about 30% longer than the carbine length gas system. So what I mean by lasting longer is generally when a bolt on an AR design fails, it normally breaks off one or both lugs on the opposing sides of the extractor, or it breaks at the cam pin, the webbing for the cam pin area in the bolt. So what they found is they saw reduced breakage of lugs and the bolts at the cam pin area as far as cracks and breakages with a longer gas system. There were other things in that testing they were looking for, but it was pretty interesting to have so much testing thrown at that type of theory, because in the past it was very subjective. People would say, well, I can feel a difference, but there wasn't a whole lot of testing data to back it up. So if I had the choice, I prefer to have an AR with a longer gas system if the barrel length can accommodate that longer gas system. Now, you can get into areas where you start running on the edge of reliability when you get a short barrel and a really long gas system and you don't have enough dwell time. You can sometimes get away with that depending on the ammunition you shoot and whether or not you shoot with a suppressor on there. A suppressor on a gun with short amount of dwell time, excuse me, will make up for the lack of dwell time in most cases. It'll build up pressure and allow the gun to operate. So you can get away with having a longer gas system with minimal dwell time if you're shooting with a suppressor in most scenarios. It's when you're shooting weaker ammunition without a suppressor where you run into reliability issues. And registered machine guns tend to show issues with dwell time a little bit more prevalent than a semi-automatic gun will. Most people aren't shooting machine guns unless they're with government entities or they have a pre-86. Some people are 07 SOTs, so they make their own machine guns. But generally speaking, most people in the American public don't have machine guns. So on a semi-auto gun, there is a fine line you have to watch for. One of the controversial barrel length is 12.5 inch barrel with a mid-length gas system. A lot of people feel that that's not an optimal gas system length. There are people that I respect tremendously that make that barrel. Again, Monty from Centurion Arms will make a 12.5 inch barrel with mid-length. Right now, he's not going to be making that for you because they're overwhelmed with a need for products, so they're not going to be making products like that. From what I understand, it's just the main stuff and get it out. But Monty from Centurion Arms does make a 12.5 mid-length gas system on request in the past, anyway. And all the ones that I've ever used just ran and ran and ran. So they definitely have some testing behind that. Is it optimal for all scenarios? No, there's no such thing as optimal for all scenarios, so it all depends on what you want to do with the gun. We have the rule of thumb on length. What's my gas port size? The enhanced bolt. Well, the one was about the Surefire bolt, another one Ray had a question about gas port size. Gas port size is something that I usually don't get into in classes because it can be subjective depending on what you're going to shoot in the gun. So what I try to teach is ammunition is what determines what is optimal for a gas port size. So if you're going to build a gun that you're going to feed a steady diet of weaker target grade ammo through, then you're going to generally need a bigger gas port to accommodate for that weaker port pressure ammo. If you're going to shoot it with NATO spec ammo, it's going to be hotter, you're going to need a smaller gas port. What you typically see, and this is why I'm not a fan of gas port charts, is gas port charts are based on data that people have for a particular manufacturer at a specific time. So if I was a barrel manufacturer, out of the gate, I would probably be more conservative with my gas port size so I don't get criticized by the AR community for making a barrel with a massive gas port in it that's way too gassy for certain ammo. What most barrel manufacturers will then find out in a very short amount of time is when they try to be conservative, if they don't tailor or market that barrel specifically for a certain type of ammo and a certain type of use, consumers will call back and then complain that the gun won't cycle the ammunition they have. So barrel manufacturers have a thin line to walk. Do they put a bigger port in it so it's more accepting of a variety of ammunition we have, or do they stay with what they want to make and say, well, this barrel is tailored for a particular type of ammo and a particular type of use? So it comes down to what audience is the manufacturer trying to market their product to. Is it more towards the law enforcement defensive role types where they tend to prefer smaller ports because they're shooting defensive ammo? Is it more of the general public that doesn't shoot that often? And I'm not saying if you're not law enforcement that you don't shoot. What I'm just trying to say is, numbers wise, the general public doesn't shoot a lot through their ARs. There's always outliers. But there's a fine line to walk when it comes to gas port sizes. So I don't get into gas port sizes. I try to look at the thing as a system or a recipe. A lot of people get really hung up on the gas port size, and they'll say, okay, well, if you have a barrel from this manufacturer with this size gas port, they recommend using this buffer in this spring. Well, the problem is there's a lot that goes on in between that gas port and the back end where that buffer starts. If you have inefficiency in the gas system in between that gas port and the back of that carrier where the buffer starts, the buffer face, then that gas port value doesn't mean as much as you think it means. If you have a leaky or an inefficient gas system, that small gas port is now even smaller. If you have a really big gas port and you have an inefficient gas system, now that big gas port isn't as big. It's actually smaller in value, depending on how much inefficiency you have in the gas system. So there's always factors you have to understand, and people always like to focus just on that gas port. And that's not to say it's not important. And I'm not saying, well, this manufacturer says that we use a certain size gas port and that's important. I'm not saying that that's not important, but a lot of people just get like these blinders on. And they're like, that's the only thing that matters. And if the manufacturer says that I have to use this buffer and spring, that's what I have to use. I've seen it time and time again where manufacturers that recommend certain buffers and springs don't work in certain combinations. Because the truth is that when you adhere to the TDP, or the technical data package, the technical data package is developed for the AR family of weapons to ensure that the handful of loads that's used on the military side, there's what, 4 or 5 loads that's used? That means that those loads will work in those family of weapons under all conditions. On the civilian side, we have almost 100 different types of magazines we can use. On the DoD or military side, you only have a handful. On the DoD side, military side, you have a couple fire control groups that are approved for use. On the civilian side, how many do we have? Hundreds? When it comes to ammunition on the civilian side, we have tens of thousands of variations of ammunition we can shoot in our ARs. On the military, DoD side, we have, like I said, 4 or 5 loads. Need to get gas in. So there's a lot more variables on the civilian side. So when people get focused on making sure that a gun is built to TDP specs, I'm not saying that it's not important to make sure that your gun is built a certain way, but those specs are all part of a recipe to ensure that that weapon system will work with the ammunition that it was designed and intended to shoot, which is NATO spec ammo when it comes to the military DoD side. On the civilian side, there's no standard for ammunition. So there's all these variables that get thrown at it. So to say that one gas port is optimal for all of the ammunition on the civilian side can be disingenuous on the surface. Now, if you dig into it and you try to really understand what certain manufacturers are trying to say, they're not being deceptive about it. They're trying to make their part to be as suitable as possible for a wide variety of ammunition that the consumers are going to shove into the gun. But it doesn't mean it's going to be optimal for everything you try to shoot. So gas port size is something that I don't really get obsessive over when it comes to a particular chart or sizes. I look at the whole gun as a system or a recipe, and I say, okay, you have this gas port size, now this is what we have to do to deal with the size port you have, depending on what kind of ammunition you want to put into the gun, if that makes sense. What's that right there? Top of the head, QC inspection, gauging, and torque values are the most common causes of mediocrity. More budget brands, barrel nuts that ugga-dugga them. Well, that question is related to QC, so I'll address it in this video. Certain cheap brands aren't the only ones that just ugga-dugga stuff together, and what some people may not understand, that's sort of a slang term in the AR community for not using any type of torque wrench. They're basically just putting all their meat weight behind a wrench and just cranking things down to get things assembled. Sometimes you can follow ugga-dugga procedures, and if you use the proper lubricants or greases to put something together, it's very easy to get it back apart. Sometimes you can follow a manufactured torque reference and use the proper assembly greases and still have a challenge getting something apart. And that's something that I try to add as a value in my classes, is not only here's the right way to put something together, but here is the way that you can get things apart without causing damage or to minimize the risk of damage. Because that's one of the challenges that people face when they're customizing their AR or replacing something it's sometimes a severe challenge to get things apart that someone else put together that you weren't there to watch. Maybe they didn't use grease, maybe they didn't use a torque wrench, maybe thread tolerances were off and they just cranked it together. You don't really know, you're going at it blind, so you have to use methods to minimize the risk of damage so you don't break something, especially if it's not yours. Alright, somebody asked about the Surefire bolt carrier. I'm not even sure if they're making it anymore. My opinion is that it's a very well thought out system. If you have a semi-automatic AR, I don't think it's something that is a necessity. It does shine in a machine gun. It slows the rate of fire. It allows for a little bit more time for the magazine to present rounds because of the way the buffer system works and the way it allows more bolt carrier travel. So it allows more time for the rounds to present themselves, to be stripped out and pushed into the chamber. So if you're interested in a Surefire bolt carrier, there's nothing wrong with it at all if you have a semi-auto gun, but I believe they shine in a machine gun application. Jeff Browning, care to share with SOTAR alumni? What question you have, Jeff? I missed it. Oh, the TDP? My friend is redesigning my website. When it's done here shortly, there will be an alumni section, which has access to all types of technical information. A lot of it is publicly released information from military testing, but it's extensive. Put it this way. Once I get that content moved over to the new site, the alumni will be sent out a password via email, the password that you registered to take a class with, and you'll have access to all that data. If you were to start reading the data on there, if I was conservative about how much data is there, it would probably take you 2 to 3 months of solid reading to get through all the data on there. It is a ton of technical information, a ton. So, those of you who are School of the American Rifle alumni, you've been to a class, that information will be completed soon for you to have access to. New website is going to solve a lot of problems that we've had in the past when it comes to access information, easy navigation, finding information that people have difficulty locating, things like that. And we're also going to launch a video portion of the website. So the concept is basically we're going to catalog video content in a way that you don't have to watch a very long video to find a very specific piece of information you're looking to learn about. That portion of the website will be pay controlled, so it's not going to be free for the public. It's going to be, well, if you want to watch a short little clip, here's the fee for that. And then we'll have a subscription-based service too. If you want to subscribe, you can watch unlimited content. But the idea is we're going to have all of my class content broken up and chaptered, so you can easily say, okay, well, I want to look for this, find it, and then you can watch a short video about that very specific subject. So you don't have to waste time looking through a lot of content that may not interest you. So I'm going to give class code dollars to access to that information. And that's what I'd like to do. I realize that a lot of people do not have access. They don't have time. Maybe they don't have the mobility to come to one of my classes. So what I'd like to do is try to reach as many people as possible with the information that I want to share. It's the whole reason that I started teaching, is to share information. Now, there are some things that I keep close to the chest because that's information that has taken me over a decade to compile. So some things I do reserve for classes. But generally speaking, even that reserve stuff isn't going to be a deal breaker if you're trying to seek out knowledge and just get video content. But I want to try to share as much information that I can and still protect my my work, if that makes sense. A lot of people have been asking about merchandise. In the past, when we made SOTAR merchandise, we used a local screen printing place, and I'm really old school about the way I do things when it comes to loyalty. So this screen printing place was a place that was without me investing a bunch of money, because I didn't have it. Said, yeah, we'll do a small run of t-shirts for you, we'll do the art rendering for your sketch that you made for your logo, and we'll make some products for you that you can give away, you can sell, whatever you want to do with. So for a while now, this local screen printing place has been my go-to to make SOTAR t-shirts, and we did a run of hoodies too. The problem with that method, even though I'm trying to stay loyal to people that were willing to work with me when I was not known at all and didn't have a business with cash flow, is it's difficult for us because we essentially have to make a gamble on how many colors and how many sizes of particular shirts we need to buy. Sometimes we miscalculate that, and it takes us a while to move merchandise because we bought a bunch of sizes or colors that people just aren't interested in. So we're sitting on products. And it's also time consuming because not only do we have to place the orders for the various sizes and colors, wait for them to be produced, shipped to us, and then at that point, people that order them, we have to package them, ship them. There's a lot of back end that goes behind that. And my wife is a tremendous help when it comes to that stuff. But it still takes a tremendous amount of time. And I would prefer to use my time more efficiently to make online content, to do videos like this, to interact with people in the Facebook group, to use my time to be more helpful instead of just shipping products. So what I'm going to try to do is find a company that can essentially just make products on demand and handle all the back end. So I'm going to have to move away from my old school mentality and go with a more modern day way of producing merchandise and use an online retailer that can just print stuff on demand as people order it. So customers will be able to pick the color, the size they want, the brand of the base tee or hoodie or whatever they're going to use, and then they'll put the logo on it and do all of the back end stuff, the shipping, the processing, everything. Still going to make it available through my web store, but it'll be handled via third party. So the only unfortunate part I can see about that is I'm now outside of the quality control aspect. In the past, we would detect problems with t-shirts, with hoodies, and we would pull them out before they got shipped. Can't guarantee that if somebody else is going to be doing it. So it's possible that people may get defective products or damaged products, and that's where I'm going to have to step in and have things replaced. So there's always going to be some involvement with merchandising, but we will have that option available on our new website. I struggle often with the monetary side of what I do. I'm in business to make money. That's the whole point of having a business. It's not a charity. It's not a nonprofit. I haven't made money with the business even up until this point. It's all been rolled back and invested into the business. Eventually we will get there. But I constantly am re-enrolling money into the business to try to improve things. And I don't know where that ending line is. It probably never will end because I'm always trying to improve things. But I try not to become what I refer to as an industry shill. I do not want you to be watching my online content so you can hear about the merchandise I want to sell you or the tools or gauges that I want to sell you. The only reason that I've made gauges in the past is because students come to a class and they're like, hey, you got those gauges there, can I have them? And I was essentially telling them, no, you can't have them because I made them for class use. And they're like, well, you just taught me how you use those to be more precise in the work that you do, but now you won't sell them to me. And it's like, well, you got me there. So what I've done, because I can't keep up with the production of gauges for the general public, is I've reserved gauge production for School of the American Rifle students only, and I do it on a pre-buy basis. I am working with the companies to start producing gauges on a commercial level. So if that all works out, hopefully School of the American Rifle Gauges will be a reality for everyone. You won't have to go on a long waiting list, and things will be great. But until that happens, right now it's just one-off making gauges. Can't guarantee that. You'll have access to those gauges in the near future, but I am working on it. But like I said, I do not want the focus of what I teach to be misconstrued as me trying to shill or sell you something. It's information. That's it. I'm not trying to sell you products. I'm not trying to force you to take my class. Like I said, I understand a lot of people can't afford my classes. So if you enjoy my video content, I really appreciate it. If you're in the Facebook group and you like it there and that's the only reason you stay on Facebook, that makes me happy. So I'm just glad to have everyone who enjoys my work, finds use in it, to be a part of what we do. We're going to take some more comments after the video's over and look at them, make some more ideas for videos, and keep a little notepad. And continue on with this. When we did our video last week, I wasn't sure if we were going to continue doing the videos. We are going to keep doing these. I can't say that I will have time to do them once a week, which is what I'm shooting for. But what I would like to do is at least create at least a bi-weekly video for the live chat if possible. And every once in a while, I like to be able to sit down and actually watch the video commentary so I can actually respond more and actually be more of a real live chat instead of you guys just listening to me talk. So that being said, the 33 of you watching right now, I appreciate you hanging out with me on my drive to work. I hope you found some of this information interesting, maybe educational. I appreciated the company though, and I will see you next week. Thanks for watching, guys and gals.